As Melania Trump stepped onto the stage, her elegant poise drew all eyes. The room buzzed with anticipation, unaware of the extraordinary moment about to unfold. When an angry protester suddenly erupted from the crowd, tension filled the air. Melania's response would stun everyone present, leaving even her harshest critics speechless. In the next few minutes, I'll break down exactly what Melania said, how she said it, and why her response was so powerful. By the end of this video, you'll have a masterclass in grace under pressure that you can apply to any confrontation in your own life. The auditorium hummed with anticipation. A sea of faces turned towards the stage. The air was thick with excitement and the faint scent of perfume. Each person leaned forward in their seat, eager to catch a glimpse of Melania Trump. She stepped into the spotlight, her poise captivating the audience. Her heels clicked against the polished floor as she approached the podium, her elegant silhouette striking against the American flag backdrop. As Melania began to speak, her words flowed with promise and hope. Her accent, a blend of Slovenian and American inflections, added charm to her delivery. The audience hung on every syllable, nodding as she painted a vision of unity and progress. Her speech touched on compassion, resilience, and diversity, resonating deeply with those gathered. Suddenly, a discordant voice shattered the atmosphere. A figure near the back rose abruptly, their face contorted with anger. Accusations flew from their lips, each word aimed at Melania's message. The protester's voice echoed through the stunned silence. Gasps rippled through the audience, bodies tensing as heads swiveled towards the commotion. The once unified crowd now seemed fractured, uncertainty etched on every face. Some half rose from their seats, others shrank back. The air crackled with tension, a stark shift from the previous warmth. Security guards hesitated, caught between duty and uncertainty. Their hands hovered near their earpieces, eyes darting between the protester and the stage, waiting for a signal. The disruption had caught everyone off guard. On stage, Melania's speech faltered into silence. Her expression remained unreadable as she absorbed the interruption, her composure contrasting the unfolding chaos. She stood still, gaze fixed on the protester, listening to the accusations. The microphone picked up her steady breathing, a calm counterpoint to the anger reverberating through the space. The audience held its collective breath, the tension palpable. Eyes darted between Melania and the protester, waiting to see how this would unfold. In that suspended moment, Melania made a choice. Her fingers uncurled from the podium, her shoulders relaxed slightly. A flicker of determination crossed her face. She raised a hand, commanding everyone's attention. As she opened her mouth to respond, the room fell into an expectant hush. The protester's words died away, replaced by a silence so complete you could hear the soft rustle of clothing. All eyes were on Melania, waiting to see how she would handle this moment of crisis. The protester's words hung in the air, sharp and accusatory. The initial shock rippled through the crowd, giving way to palpable tension. Eyes darted between Melania Trump, poised on stage, and the figure who had disrupted the event. "How dare you speak of unity when your husband's policies tear families apart?" The protester's voice rang out. "You stand there in designer clothes while children suffer in cages at the border." The protester, a woman in her mid-30s with dark hair and a severe ponytail, seemed to embody the frustrations of countless Americans who felt unheard. As her tirade continued, the audience's shock morphed into a mix of emotions. Some faces flushed with anger, eyes narrowing. Others shifted uncomfortably, torn between admiration for Melania and the uncomfortable truths being hurled at her. A man stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "Show some respect," he shouted. His outburst ignited support. Several attendees rose, their voices joining in defense of the First Lady. "This isn't the time or place. Let her speak. Security, get that woman out of here." The cacophony swelled, but the protester persisted. What about the children separated from their parents? What about the families living in fear of deportation? Melania remained composed. Her eyes turned to steel as she focused on the protester. Not a flicker of emotion crossed her face. Security guards moved through the crowd, adding another layer of tension. The protester, sensing her time was limited, raised her voice. You claim to care about children with your Be Best campaign, but where is your compassion for the most vulnerable? How can you sleep at night knowing the pain your family's policies have caused? Her words struck a chord with some. A few nodded silently, expressions conflicted. Others sat frozen, unsure how to react. The room had become a microcosm of the nation's divided political landscape. As security drew closer, the protester gathered herself for one final salvo. You have the power to make a difference, to speak out against injustice. Instead, you choose silence. Your complicity makes you just as guilty. The room held its breath, all eyes on Melania. How she chose to handle this crisis would define not just the evening, but potentially her entire tenure as First Lady. The once united audience fractured into a mosaic of conflicting reactions. The tension burst, unleashing chaos throughout the auditorium. As the protesters' words echoed, the event transformed into a powder keg of emotions. Attendees rose to their feet, shouting back at the protester. Their voices clashed with those calling for calm. The atmosphere shifted dramatically, thick with unease. Security guards surged through the crowd with newfound urgency. Their movements became forceful and direct. "Make way!" one guard shouted. Another spoke into his radio. "We need backup at the main entrance now!" Cameras flashed, journalists jostling for position. At the stage's edge, Melania's staff huddled, their gestures betraying the gravity of the situation. The air grew thick with tension. People shifted uncomfortably, some fanning themselves, others glancing at exits. The crowd rippled with conflicting emotions: shock, anger, fear, and curiosity. A man shouted, "This is ridiculous! Security, do your job!" A woman responded, "Let her speak! We have a right to be heard." Competing chants emerged. "Melania!" Melania clashed with, "Answer her!" "This isn't what we came for," an elderly woman exclaimed. A young man retorted, "Maybe it's exactly what we needed to hear." Amidst the tumult, a small group began to sing softly. Their patriotic song about unity spread, soothing frayed nerves. Not everyone joined, but the shift in energy was undeniable. Suddenly, a hush fell. All eyes turned to Melania, who remained motionless, her expression unreadable, the First Lady's posture rigid. The audience held its breath, waiting for her next move. In that suspended moment, the weight of expectations pressed down on everyone present. The air in the auditorium crackled with tension as Melania Trump stood, motionless at the podium. Her face, a mask of composure, betrayed nothing of the storm that raged within. Time seemed to stretch, the weight of expectation pressing down on everyone present. Melania's mind raced, a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions swirling through her consciousness. Years of public scrutiny had prepared her for moments of pressure. But this was different. The protesters' words hung in the air, a challenge that demanded a response. Her instincts screamed at her to retreat, to let security handle the situation and salvage what dignity remained of the event. From the wings, her staff gestured frantically, their faces etched with panic. Their silent pleas were clear: leave the stage, now. But something held Melania in place, a force stronger than habit or protocol. Her eyes swept across the auditorium, taking in the scene before her. The faces in the crowd were a mosaic of emotion: shock, anger, curiosity, and even a glimmer of hope. In that moment, Melania saw beyond the immediate chaos to the deeper currents of division that ran through the heart of the nation. The microphone stood before her, both an opportunity and a threat. To speak now would be to step into uncharted territory, to defy the carefully scripted nature of her public persona. The risk was immense. One wrong word, one misstep, and the headlines would be merciless. A memory surfaced. A conversation she'd had years ago with a young immigrant child, tears streaming down the girl's face as she spoke of her fears and hopes for the future. That memory sparked something in Melania, a determination, a clarity of purpose that cut through the chaos of the moment. Her body language shifted subtly. Her shoulders straightened, her chin lifted. The decision crystallized in her mind with startling clarity. With a deep breath, Melania stepped forward. The crowd collectively inhaled, the tension reaching a fever pitch. Instead of retreating, Melania smiled, a genuine expression of warmth and understanding. When she spoke, her voice was soft, yet clear, carrying to every corner of the now silent auditorium. "Thank you," she said, addressing the protester directly. "Thank you for your passion, for your concern for the children. It's a concern we share, even if we may disagree on the best ways to address it." A ripple of surprise moved through the crowd. Melania continued, her words measured but heartfelt. "I came to this country as an immigrant, seeking a better life. I know the fear, the uncertainty that comes with that journey, and I know that behind every policy, every decision made in Washington, there are real people, real families affected." She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. "I cannot stand here and pretend that I have all the answers, but I can promise you this. I hear you. Your pain, your frustration, your desire for change. I hear it all. And I believe that it's only by truly listening to each other, by finding our common ground, that we can begin to heal the divisions in our nation." The air in the auditorium crystallized, every molecule suspended in anticipation. Melania's voice, when it finally broke the silence, was a balm to the frayed nerves of the crowd. Her words, measured and clear, cut through the chaos like a beam of light through storm clouds. "I understand your pain," she began, her accent adding authenticity. "And I want you to know that I hear you, not just your words, but the emotion behind them." The protester, caught off guard, faltered. Her anger began to ebb, replaced by confusion. Melania continued, her voice gaining strength. "You speak of children suffering, of families torn apart. These are real people, with real stories and real pain." The audience leaned forward, curious. The tension began to dissipate, replaced by collective intrigue. "I have visited the border," Melania revealed. "I have looked into the eyes of children separated from their parents. I have held their hands and listened to their stories. Each time, a piece of my heart breaks." A murmur rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the defensive response they expected. Melania offered vulnerability, empathy, and shared concern. "But I also want to share something else," she continued. "I have seen the tireless work of those trying to reunite families. I have witnessed the dedication of social workers, lawyers, and volunteers who work day and night to ensure that no child is left behind." As she spoke, the atmosphere shifted. Like ice melting under the sun, the crowd's hostility began to thaw. "To the protester who spoke up today," Melania said, "I want to thank you. Thank you for caring enough to speak out. Thank you for reminding us all that behind every policy, every decision, there are real human lives at stake." The protester's face softened, her posture relaxing. She nodded, acknowledging the unexpected connection. "But I also challenge you," Melania continued. "Channel that passion into action. Volunteer at a local immigrant support center. Donate to organizations that provide legal aid to separated families. Use your voice not just to protest, but to educate and inspire others to get involved." As Melania's words resonated, Their impact rippled through the crowd. People who had been ready for confrontation now sat back, thoughtful expressions replacing anger. "We may not agree on everything," Melania acknowledged, "but I believe we can find common ground in our shared humanity. In our desire to see children safe, families united, and our nation healing." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. The silence that followed was a contemplative hush, filled with the possibility of understanding. "So, let us move forward," Melania concluded, "not as adversaries, but as fellow Americans who, despite our differences, share a common goal: a better, more compassionate future for all." The auditorium fell silent as Melania Trump's composure radiated from the podium. Her calm demeanor, a stark contrast to the earlier chaos, seemed to envelop the room like a soothing balm. The First Lady's voice, steady and clear, carried a message of unity that began to bridge the divide that had moments ago threatened to tear the gathering apart. As Melania spoke, the protesters' anger visibly ebbed. The woman's clenched fists slowly uncurled, her fingers trembling slightly as they relaxed. Her face softened from rage to uncertainty, eyebrows furrowing as she blinked rapidly, struggling to reconcile the figure before her with the one she had come to confront. The transformation was subtle but undeniable, a testament to the power of Melania's words and the unexpected grace with which she delivered them. Throughout the auditorium, audience members gradually settled back into their seats. The rustle of clothing and creaking of chairs punctuated Melania's pauses, creating a rhythm that seemed to sync with her measured cadence. As people sat, the physical landscape of the room shifted, mirroring the emotional change taking place within its walls. Melania's voice grew stronger, her message resonating with increasing clarity. She spoke of shared hopes and common struggles, weaving a narrative that encompassed both the protesters' concerns and the broader audience's aspirations. The First Lady's words acted as a bridge, spanning the chasm of misunderstanding that had moments ago seemed insurmountable. In an unexpected move, Melania extended an olive branch to the protester. She acknowledged the woman's passion and invited her to channel that energy into constructive action, speaking of volunteer opportunities and community initiatives. The security guards, sensing the shift in atmosphere, quietly stepped back, melting into the background. A hush fell over the crowd as Melania's words sank in. Audience members leaned forward in their seats, hanging on every word. The air grew thick with unspoken emotions, surprise, respect, and a burgeoning sense of unity. The protester's shoulders, once rigid with anger, began to relax. Her gaze, which had been fiery and accusatory, softened into something more contemplative. As Melania continued to speak, the woman's hand, which had been raised in defiance, slowly lowered to her side. The transformation in the room was palpable. Where there had been discord, a fragile harmony began to emerge. Whispered discussions broke out among audience members, punctuated by nods of understanding and tentative smiles. As Melania concluded her response, the atmosphere had undergone a remarkable metamorphosis, uniting those who had been divided in their admiration for the First Lady's handling of the situation. The air in the auditorium shimmered with newfound energy. Where moments ago tension had crackled, now wonder rippled through the crowd. Audience members exchanged glances, eyes wide with disbelief, struggling to process the extraordinary scene unfolding before them. The protester, who had burst onto the stage with such fury, stood motionless. Her earlier rage had melted away, replaced by quiet contemplation. Her hands, once clenched into fists, now hung loosely at her sides. The transformation was so striking that some in the crowd blinked, as if expecting her anger to resurface at any moment. Melania Trump, still at the podium, regarded the protester with warmth that seemed to reach across the divide between them. Slowly, deliberately, she extended her hand towards the woman who had interrupted her speech. It was a gesture that spoke volumes, an invitation to bridge the gap between opposing viewpoints. The crowd held its collective breath. Security guards, poised to intervene, stood frozen, their eyes darting between the First Lady and the protester. Melania's staff huddled at the edge of the stage, faces a mix of concern and amazement. One aide half rose from her seat as if to intervene, but a colleague gently pulled her back down. For what felt like an eternity, the protester remained rooted to the spot. Her gaze flickered between Melania's outstretched hand and her face, as if searching for some hidden motive. Then, with palpable hesitancy, she took a halting step towards the stage. The sound of her footfall echoed in the silent auditorium. Another step followed, then another. Each movement was cautious, as if she were walking on ice that might crack at any moment. As the protester drew closer, the silence in the room deepened. It was as if everyone present understood that they were witnessing something rare, a moment when the walls of political division began to crumble, revealing the shared humanity beneath. Finally, protester and First Lady stood face to face. The contrast between them was stark. Melania, poised and elegant in her tailored suit, and the protester, her hair disheveled, her face still flushed from her earlier outburst. For a heartbeat, they simply looked at each other. Then, Melania stepped down from the podium and, without hesitation, embraced the protester. The auditorium erupted in a collective gasp. This was no mere handshake, but an act of genuine compassion. The protester, clearly stunned, stood rigid for a moment before her arms slowly rose to return the embrace. As the two women stood locked in this unexpected show of unity, something shifted in the room. The event had transformed into a powerful lesson in empathy, in the ability to see beyond labels and find common ground. The auditorium buzzed with quiet energy, a collective exhalation of breath held too long. Melania's words had rewritten the script of public discourse. The protester, once a symbol of division, now stood as a testament to the power of empathy. As the crowd dispersed, conversations sparked between strangers about bridges built through understanding. In the following weeks, social media brimmed with stories of small acts of kindness inspired by that evening. People shared experiences of finding common ground in unexpected places. Melania's response had become a catalyst, igniting a spark of compassion that spread through a nation starved for unity. As one commentator noted, "In a world of shouting matches, she showed us the power of a whisper,